collect about 3.5 tonnes of litter from one area. Basically, that's how bad it is. It doesn't look that bad, but when you're actually out dealing with it, it's quite a serious issue. And obviously, it's from an environmental impact point of view, there's quite a major consideration. So I'd just like to ask what the plans are in terms of enforcement. Thank you.
Very good. Thanks ever so much for your question and making the effort to come in. We really appreciate that. And I think it's a topic close to all the members here's heart, so because it's destroying our environment. Councillor Rise, you okay to comment on that? Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader, and thank you, Sarah, for your question. And I just want to pay tribute to the work that you do with Life Not Litter as well. It's a good community project you do. I fully agree with you that enforcement is essential in tackling fly tipping, and where possible, we always do enforce. Recently, about 2 years ago, the council purchased mobile CCTV, which has been deployed in a number of areas, which has seen a reduction in the fly tipping instances. However, and I will come to this later on when I introduce the report, in order to enforce the fines, it's important that we have the evidence and we were able to identify the fly tipper, because sometimes if we're not able to identify the offender, we can't then enforce. So what I do recommend, and I take the point, more enforcement is needed, and it's something I want to see, but we do need that evidence. So I always encourage residents or anybody to report fly tipping when found, if they see fly tipping taking place, to also report that immediately. It is a crime. If you report that to the council, it can be enforced, and then we can see further enforcement and further prosecutions as well.
Does she need to say? Yeah, here we go. What I was going to say, and I totally agree with all the points you've said, absolutely. I think what one of the major issues is with householders being accountable once they've paid refuse, basically, waste disposal contractors to dispose of waste. Because if their waste then appears, even though they might recognise it, I think a lot of people aren't going to own up to the fact it's theirs, because the fine predominantly falls to the person who's paid the waste carrier to dispose of it. And I think that's something that needs reviewing, not just locally, but on a national level. I understand why it was put in place, but I think it's had the opposite effect. I think we need to make the people basically being paid to be accountable rather than householders to a certain extent.
Thank you, Sarah, for the follow-up. I don't know if you've seen the report, but as you'll see in the report, there is a significant difference between the householder waste duty of care and the fly tipping fixed penalty notice, quite significantly. I think that also acknowledges the level of responsibility. I would agree the person actually doing the fly tipping is the person actually committing the crime. However, it is all of our responsibilities, if we are hiring someone to dispose of our waste, that we do check that they have the proper licensing. And so it's important that it's not just a quick, easy man with a van that said, oh, well, yeah, I can get rid of that for you, and then you find it down some back road. It's actually someone who is licensed to dispose of waste. Always within our enforcement regime there is a level of accountability and proportionality as well, and if there was mitigating factors, that would be taken into account as well. However, I think I do disagree. I think it is important that the householder waste duty of care remains. I think we as all residents have a responsibility to dispose of our waste sensibly and sustainably. And if we're not checking a very easy task of checking the person's licences, that's also an admission of guilt and complicity as well. What I would also add is that I don't want to kind of preempt everything in the report, but that we are looking at what other works we can do to make sure residents are reminded about that duty of care as well, so they're fully armed with all of the facts when they're able to dispose of their waste. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. I think, Mr Stevens, you were just going to chip in as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, I was. But in fact, Councillor Rise covered off most of my points. So I was going to make exactly the same comments. The duty of care is there really to make sure that residents do make appropriate checks if they're going to hand their waste over and their money to a waste carrier that perhaps isn't licensed. But there is a degree of proportionality there. Clearly, if they have undertaken reasonable checks, but it transpires that that person still disposes of that waste irresponsibly, we wouldn't take action against the householder because that wouldn't be appropriate. We'd very much focus on the fly tipper themselves. We will do a lot of messaging around this to make sure the public are aware of their responsibilities, how they can report fly tipping offences to us within corporate enforcement, and also other ways that they can dispose of their waste appropriately. The last thing I was going to suggest, Sarah, is if you wanted to have a conversation with myself or the officers that are responsible for investigating fly tipping, we're happy to do that.
Thanks ever so much for your question and the answers from the colleagues. It hasn't been a good week for fly tipping in Lightwater either this week. Hook Mill Lane was actually blocked by a full load tip, seeing as it's a back route for a number of residents. It's clearly highly inconvenient as well as damaging the environment. So yeah, we understand. I think we all understand where you're coming from across the whole of the chamber. Let's move on now to questions by members. Point 5. Councillor Claret, please.
I was pleased to see that the draft council accounts for 2021, if you see what I mean, were published on the 11th of March. But these were not publicised well, and so the public inspection period was between 14th and 26th of April, and residents and businesses that were interested did not really know about that. So I wondered that, as we want to be financially transparent, is there any legal reason why this inspection period cannot be repeated with more communication about this to residents?
See, I didn't take my mic off. Apologies. Councillor McIntyre, are you okay with this one, or is Mr Watson responding?
Thank you for the question. As we know, the auditors are not auditing the accounts, so the statutory inspection period doesn't really work because there are no audited accounts to comment on. However, I know Mr Watson is happy to take any questions on the accounts if there's anyone that wants to ask any questions on it. Obviously with the caveat that lots of questions takes the individuals away from producing the next set of accounts. I don't know whether Mr Watson wants to add anything to that.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Yes, the statutory period relates to people being able to ask questions of the auditor. The auditors haven't really made themselves available around there. If they are going to start auditing the accounts, I would expect us to be able to open a further period of inspection anyway.
Thanks very much, Mr Watson. Councillor McIntyre. I think Councillor Kang, I'm being advised you were next up. Thank you, Nomal.
Yes, good evening. Question to Sean. I was concerned to hear of the further extension of the end of custody supervised licence scheme by up to 70 days due to prison overcrowding, particularly given men and women's prisons nearby in West End Send. Has the leader seen any correspondence through the Surrey Heath Partnership members as to how this hastily arranged release of prisoners will impact residents in terms of increased risk to community safety, particularly in the case of domestic abusers who typically get shorter sentences?
Thank you, Councillor Kang. Yeah, clearly, I'm sure many of us were concerned with that recent announcement. The inability to plan ahead is obviously something to be regretted. And and possibly there'll be, this is not my specialised subject, but I can only anticipate there'll be a cascading of prisoners down through the system. So whilst our local ones are category C, it may well be that people end up in there that wouldn't ordinarily have been in there at this time. It is true to say that the Surrey Heath Partnership includes the probation service as a statutory partner, as it does the Surrey Police and indeed Surrey Fire and Rescue Service. We have not had a lot of traction from the probation service. I think we can all hypothesise why, which is that their resources have been severely constrained. Nevertheless, we will take the opportunity to reach out to them to see whether we should in any way be particularly concerned, as some of those people will not have completed their rehabilitation. As I understand it, the final phases of prison life are helping to people adjust into going back into the community. So that may well have been cut short, which potentially leaves our residents a little bit at risk, not just obviously from the local prisons, but from wherever prisoners have been released early. So we'll take the action to follow up on that, and if we get anything sensible out of the probation service that we can share, or even other parties, then we'll make sure we do that so that the counsellors can be fully informed. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. I think the safety of local residents is paramount.
Exactly that. So it would be good to see the risk assessment that has allowed this to happen and what the additional controls are that are in place. Particularly, as I said, I think the probation service was stretched already before receiving an extra influx. Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Kang. Councillor Noble.
Thank you, Leader. This is probably a question for Councillor McIntyre and possibly the Section 151 officer. I noticed that the Section 151 officer's notice to residents on the 11th of March concerning the 2020-21 accounts publishing had one particular section that I quote, "As it's unlikely that the audit partners will be able to fully review these accounts in advance of the government's proposed backstop date, although the legislation around this has not yet been confirmed, the council has arranged that the accounts have been reviewed for consistency, completeness and accuracy by a third-party financial reporting specialist. Could members please have details of the third party's scope of work and the qualifications for the oversight role, as they would for an external auditor, as well as confirmation that any third party review completed was at arm's length from the completion of the accounts? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Noble. Who's picking that one up? Councillor McIntyre? Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Noble. I'm going to hand over actually to Mr. Watson, but I know that we're using a number of different third parties to look at different parts of the balances or the statements on the basis that need different experts to confirm using their professional opinions the individual balances. But I think it's probably right for Mr. Watson to give any further detail on that one.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre, Councillor Noble, for the question. I think it's quite important to understand before we go anywhere that there's only one person who's responsible for signing the accounts off as a true and fair view, and that's the Chief and Finance Officer of the Council, and that would be me. I do that, and generally the auditors would then confirm that opinion in their ISA 260 report on the Council's accounts. We know that during the process of the current accounts we've got on the website in draft format, and the two that we're hoping to publish by the backstop date, that the auditors will more than likely give a disclaimed opinion on it. Therefore, for me to give my opinion that they represent a true and fair view, I do have to rely on certain third parties, but more importantly, I rely on the professional accountants that the Council employs, who are all members of professional accounting bodies and are therefore obliged to provide proper accounts and proper accounting statements. We're also then supported by external valuers who will value our assets that are done independently. These valuations are then reviewed by our own internal team of RICS qualified surveyors, and that will then get passed to the accountancy team to put those balances into the accounts on the balance sheet. Similarly, we've also engaged a recognised expert in the business of business rates and council tax, i.e. the collection fund for the council, and they are providing their input in there. They are known as LG Futures and are recognised within the local authority area as being the aforementioned experts on this part of the accounting process. Similarly, we will be using our own retained treasury advisors to look at our capital financing and minimum revenue provision over the last 3 or 4 years, or actually back to 2017-18. We're currently in the process of engaging with those. That is Link Group currently. And then thirdly, or finally, I have an independent body who is a separate firm, although we have used them previously, who are overseeing the accounts to make sure they're there for completeness and potentially having the right bits of the accounts in the right order. They are not, and they stress this quite clearly, external auditors. They're not there to do the job of external auditors, and therefore they've asked me not to mention their name, and that's a client confidentiality I intend to respect.
Thank you, Mr. Watson. Very comprehensive. Councillor Hode?
Thank you, Chair. I've got a follow-on question on accounts, so I guess this is another one for Councillor McIntyre and Mr. Watson. So it's good to see we've made progress in publishing the 2021 accounts, and well done to everyone, because I'm sure that was a big slug of work, so thank you for that. Looking forward, can we get an estimate of when we may expect to complete the subsequent outstanding accounts up to and including 23-24, and also implementing the actions that were referred to in the 24-25 budget amendment that we looked at quite recently? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hode. Yes, a big step forward, so thank you for noting that. One down, a couple more to go. Who's picking that one up? Councillor McIntyre? There's a bit of a pattern going here.
So, Dave, for finance questions. So in terms of the actions out of the amendment, I think the majority of those have just been actually covered in Mr. Watson's last response to Councillor Noble. In terms of the dates for the outstanding accounts, the backstop date that we need to hit is obviously the 30th of September. Mr. Watson and his team have produced obviously the last draft accounts actually fairly quickly. So obviously the aspiration is to overachieve on that. And then the 23-24 accounts backstop date is March. So sorry, the first one is the 30th of September. The second one is the 31st of March 2025. So that's the draft. Well, that's the anticipated timelines. I don't know whether Mr. Watson wants to give any better timelines than the end date point. But don't forget that BDO needs to provide their fair value statements, obviously on the ones that we've done so far. So although they're not doing the audits, that still has to happen on all of the years that haven't had the financial statements.
Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. Mr. Watson, anything to add? Your
Thank
latest
you,
best estimate?
No, just to confirm the backstop dates for the 2021-22 accounts and the 22-23 accounts is the 30th of September. In reality, to allow for the inspection period, we would have to try and hit the end of August to get those published online, which we will do. The 23-24 accounts, which we are expecting to be audited by Grant Thornton, our new auditors, will be Again, we're targeting 31st of March as the 25 as a drop dead date, but they have indicated on their audit timelines they would hope to have it done by the end of the calendar year, so sometime in January 2025 for audited 23-24 accounts.
Super.
Thank you both. It's good to feel like we have a plan and we're really moving forward. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Councillor Holt. Okay, we'll move on unless there's any more. Oh, there is. I'm terribly sorry. Councillor Phelan-Cook.
Thank you. If you will allow me, Leader, I actually have two questions, but I'll start with one and try and push my luck with two. Residents across Watches Ward have been reporting issues with bin emptying, missing QR codes and litter left following sporting fixtures at Watches Recreation Ground. Whilst I'm very pleased to acknowledge that there have been significant improvements in this area, and I commend all the hard work that our officers have put into achieving this improvement, could I please ask what actions are being taken to address greater than usual usage levels of the bins in our green spaces and across our communities as the weather improves and there are more sporting activities taking place?
Thank you, Councillor. I think we know where this one's heading, yes. Councillor Rice.
Thank you, Councillor Phelan-Cook. Thank you, Leader. So obviously our bins are handled by two contracts, but one with Amy, one with Glendale. The Amy contract is set out to ensure that all street cleansing responsibilities, including the empty of litter bins, are categorised into priority zones according to use. This not only ensures that areas with higher footfall are maintained more frequently, it also enables a greater level of monitoring to be undertaken. The Amy contract is now well established and they have a combination of local knowledge and proactive operatives which allows them to be more aware of those litter overflow hotspots during the summer months. With this information, there is a level of flexibility of an output-based contract and the local management team are able to reallocate street cleansing resources to those areas in line with seasonal variations. With regards to Glendale, which I think is probably more along the lines of the question that you're asking in terms of green spaces, Glendale have one permanent member of staff emptying bins. However, they're able to flex their other resources to support this operative and to meet the demands of the season and the pressures on parks. Event holders are requested to clear up after events that are held in our green spaces, which, if not undertaken by the event holders, are undertaken by the green spaces team, which is then recharged to the event holders. I do just want to reassure Councillor Phelan-Cook and all members that we, while I know there's been a period recently of probably more bins that have been overflowing and probably more reporting, the teams are aware of it and we are flexing those resources where possible to make sure that we have a dynamic team that can respond to overflowing bins as well as maintaining our regular schedule of bin emptying.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. I think one more from Councillor Rowlands. I think you had your hand up earlier, and then we're going to move on. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I wonder if the Chairman is aware of how much the tectonic plates of political organisation in this area changed on the 2nd of May, and how much we're reflecting the opportunities this provides us with the relationship with Rushmore, and how we could develop effective connections with Rushmore. Bearing in mind, we have some reservations, I think, as a council about how effectively we're being backed by county council in large areas of the way we operate. And I know from my conversations that Rushmore are talking to the Liberal Democrat group, along with other people, about how they're going to implement and change their attitudes. And one of those changes is to look across the border to links with ourselves.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Having gone to school in Rushmore, I know the area quite well. Congratulations to your party on taking control there. It is a complicated issue for us as a council to collaborate with Rushmore, not that we're not into collaboration per se, where it's in interest residents, but just but just the fact that there is the border there and they look towards Hampshire and obviously we look towards Surrey. That said, particularly in the area of the hospital, we have areas of common interest that we should be looking to work together and understanding how we can best put forward all our residents' interests through, for example, the Joint Committee other routes as well that Councillor Claret kindly attended the other day that was held here on Friday. So yeah, there are opportunities to look to work with Rushmore, and I have a suspicion there's somebody that's related to the leader there that I can't quite put my finger on right now. So we're happy to open up those avenues, but it is a bit more complicated because of the boundary, the county boundary. Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. Okay, we move on at speed. Councillor Ashbury, I think you have local community project fund bid. Please.
Thank you, Leader. As you know, we open twice a year. We open a window for bids to the Community Infrastructure Levy Fund. This one relates to some benches on Heatherside Park and Wellingtonia Avenue, and some silhouette statues and a memorial bench to be used in acts of remembrance. It's a rather modest sum and recommend it for approval.
Thank you, Councillor Ashbury. Any questions on that, anybody? No. Can I just check the mechanics, because the resolution says that this is going to an individual. Is that correct, or does it go to Heatherside Residents Association for coordination?
I'm unsure how the mechanism. I know it was done in conjunction with the Heatherside Residents Association, and the bid was put in on their behalf. I'm unsure who exactly the money would be paid to. Perhaps if Mr. Chinier or Mr. Roberts could clarify that for us.
Thank you, Leader. My understanding is that the money is paid after the costs have been incurred, and on receipt of proof of payment invoices. So the intention is not to pay the money to an individual, but to pay for the actual works. Thank you.
Thank you for clarifying. Sorry, I only spotted it there, Councillor Ashbury, as we were reading it. So are we all agreed to accept the recommendation as documented? Agreed? Thank you. Okay. We move on to the review of fixed penalty notices, which has attracted some interest today. So thank you again for coming. Councillor Rise, I think this one's with you.
Yes, thank you, Leader. I'm pleased to introduce this report, which sets out proposed changes to the levels of our fixed penalty notice for environmental offences, including fly tipping, littering, graffiti and fly posting. Also included within the list of offences, the householder waste duty of care, which places a duty on all of us to dispose of our waste correctly and make proper checks to ensure that the man with a van is going to dispose of our waste legitimately. As a borough, we take the protection of our environment seriously, and the proposed fees set out in section 1.6 of the report are intended to act as a deterrent to these offensive and detrimental breaches of environmental legislation that take place. Where we have reliable evidence to identify the perpetrator of offences such as these, we will ensure that these sanctions are used robustly. In some instances, such as repeat offences or for commercial fly tipping, where there is greater impact and harm, we will not use fixed penalty notice, but we will instead prosecute, and we have had success in that. As part of our approach to publicising these changes to the level of fines, we will also be carrying out a communications campaign which will be informing residents of how they can dispose of their waste properly and informing them of how they can report environmental offences that they witness. I would ask you to approve the recommendation in front of you in the paper. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. Apologies, I forgot to put my mic off again. I'm getting rusty at this. Any questions from anybody? Please, Councillor Garrett.
Thank you. Thank you for the report. It's good to see that we're looking at the fixed penalties. A couple of questions, really. The litter picking, I noticed, and the fly posting, actually. The maximum previous was 150. The new maximum we could offer was 500, but for whatever reason, we've decided to stick with 150 on both the litter picking and fly posting. So I'd be interested to understand what the reasoning behind that is. And does fly posting include estate agent boards? And if it doesn't, what does that come under? Because I know, speaking to the team and recent meetings we've had, there has been an increase, and I know the enforcement team are trying to enforce that and trying to make these estate agents stop putting them everywhere. So it would be interesting to understand if that doesn't fall into that, is that something we can do? And my last question is, when the funds come in, where do they actually go? And I'm guessing we don't. It's probably just to cover costs, etc. But it'd be interested to know where those funds go. Thank you.
Councillor Rice, you're going to take that?
Yeah, thank you. So just I'll start off with the reasons for not using the maximum for the littering and fly posting. When we were reviewing this, I personally felt that having a fixed penalty notice for littering of £500 was a bit much, and I felt that it was rather draconian. I think £150 is a significant fine for littering, and so previously it was the maximum was £150. We didn't go up to that maximum of £150. So there's a kind of there's the historical precedence of not using the maximum. What we do use the maximum for is for the fly tipping. But that was the main reason. I felt that £500 was a bit steep for someone potentially dropping a piece of litter. With regards to the estate agent boards, I believe that they're not covered by fly posting. Please, if I pass over those two final questions to Julia Greenfield, the estate agent boards, and where the funds go. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Rise. You're correct. A little bit of confusion there, but it's fly posting isn't covered. Estate agent board isn't covered by fly posting. It comes under breach of the planning regulations for control of adverts regulations. And you're right, the team are working hard. It is a bit of a losing battle, but we're working extremely hard with the estate agents in the borough, trying to get them to act proportionately and within the confines of the law. I'll pass over to Mr. Stevens re the funds.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. I think the first thing to say is this isn't a money-making enterprise in any way, shape or form. This is about holding people to account where they're acting irresponsibly or unlawfully. You'll see from the stats in the report, we haven't issued a substantial number of fixed penalty notices as much as we'd like to. Clearly the challenge in a lot of instances is the evidence, and that's why I did admit earlier on to say that what we would dearly like is for the public to come forward in every available opportunity to give us the evidence that we need to take action. Because it is blighting our environment, there's no doubt about that. As far as where the limited amount of income would go from fixed penalty notices, effectively that goes back into funding the corporate enforcement team and making sure that we have the resource to be able to take action where needed.
Okay, good. If there's no other comments from anybody or questions? No? Good. Okay, so are we happy with the recommendation as documented in the paper?
Agreed.
Agreed. Okay, item number 8, which I think again is you, Councillor Rise, isn't it? Oh no, it's Councillor Ashbury. Councillor? Oh, it is Councillor Rise. Thank you.
Thank you, Leader. There was a bit of confusion because parking services now comes under Councillor Ashbury, but it's fine. I will take this. You will note in the report that within the recommendation there is delegation to Councillor Ashbury, which will be moving forward. Surrey Heath Parking Team relies on 2 vehicles to undertake patrols and inspections on the 17 car parks located around the borough. Unfortunately, one of the vehicles, our 2008 Vauxhall Astra, experienced a catastrophic ECU failure which caused it to be immobile. Please don't ask me what ECU stands for. Deemed beyond economic repair and then subsequently scrapped. Officers are relying on the loan of another vehicle from the Green Spaces team to conduct their patrols, which is unsustainable in the long term. The other parking vehicle is a 2006 Renault Kangoo diesel, which is close to the end of its serviceable life. This provides an opportunity to look at further greening our fleet, and the proposal before you is to immediately replace the scrapped vehicle with a new electric van. The second vehicle will be replaced when it's considered uneconomical to repair, potentially at its next MOT. Replacing these 2 diesel vehicles with EVs is estimated to reduce our carbon production by around 3.2 tonnes of carbon-2 emissions a year. CO2 emissions a year, which is a positive step towards our ambition to be net zero for carbon emissions by 2030. The recommendation before you asks for a capital budget of £22,000 to purchase one vehicle and install two electric vehicle chargers. The cost of the second vehicle will be included within the capital budget for the 25-26 financial year and will only be purchased when the current vehicle is beyond economic repair or is rendered too unreliable for use. Thank you.
Good. Any questions or queries on this one? Councillor Garrett was first, marginally.
Thank you. Engine control unit. That wasn't that one. Didn't get that one for free. So brilliant that we're looking to replace the cars with electric. Do we need two? Is my first question, and why do we need two? And the only other question was referenced the EV charging. I'm guessing this is going to be in some way have a PIN number on it, because otherwise we might find that residents might start using our EV charging for their own purposes.
Why do we need two? Because of the number of car parks that we have, and the parking services team have identified that we need two vehicles. Generally, one's used and then one is kind of a backup, I believe I'm just going to, I'll hand over to Mr. Stevens in a moment. With regards to the charging, those will be located in a secure area within the Main Square car park, which will only be accessible by our staff. And I will pass over to Mr. Stevens.
Thank you, Councillor Rice. Thank you, Councillor Garrett. So effectively, we run shift rotas, so we have staff on duty 7 days a week. And because of the quantum of staff we have, and because of the quantum of car parks and the need to replenish machines with tickets, make sure that we have height barriers that are locked, and we don't have missing padlocks and other such challenges, and to make sure the car parks are generally safe, we need to have the two vehicles to make sure we can conduct those checks on a regular basis. In relation to the EV charging, the charger that we've received quotes for is effectively app controlled, so it won't allow anyone else to charge. And the vehicles will be located in an area within Main Square car park where, because of reduced head height, they're not used for general parking. It's allocated to council car parking, staff parking.
Councillor McIntyre, please.
So it's not really a question, it's more a couple of points really. So EVs are generally, they are less expensive to maintain. And I know that's already in here in terms of maintenance, but it's more, the point in here is more about because they're newer vehicles, but EVs are just generally lower, cheaper to maintain, so completely supportive on that. I don't think it's the right thing to do to purchase outright on the basis that EVs have a huge amount of technical capability and battery technology that is going to improve exponentially. And there's also huge amounts of, obviously with the move to EVs for new vehicles by 2035, there are so many incentives out there by OEMs who manufacture these vehicles that you can get really good deals on them. So I would just suggest that we properly look at whether or not it's better to own and be burdened with an ageing vehicle over time that will end up with lower, which will end up with older technology, which will go old quite quickly, versus leasing a vehicle so that sort of that ownership or the risk of ownership is not as prevalent for the council.
Mr. Stevens, please.
Thank you, Leader. Thank you, Councillor McIntyre. This is something that we've looked at quite closely over the last couple of months, and we've flitted between outright purchase and lease as a consequence. There's been substantial fluctuations in the lease costs, so the year one cost and then the monthly cost thereafter. And basically what we did is we based our financial comparisons on a 4-year lifespan. And currently it's more prudent to purchase than it is to lease because of the interest rates applied. there is a fine balance, and clearly before we go to procure anything through outright purchase, we will reassess that and make sure that the lease isn't more financially attractive. There are risks both ways, I understand that, but clearly with any new vehicle we have 3 years where there is no MOT required. We have a warranty for that vehicle for 4 years, and then there's a wider warranty for the battery life as well. So if there is battery degradation, that can be addressed through the warranty that we have. Against that, there is also a risk that if we handed back a vehicle that had more than reasonable wear and tear after a 4-year period on a lease hire agreement, the council would incur additional costs. So we need to be cautious of both.
Councillor Garrett.
Just coming off the back of that, is there any mileage, and I apologise for the pun, is there any mileage in speaking to, and I don't know how this works with the council, speaking to a local car garage that could have their logos, etc., on the car for a reduced cost? And I don't know how that works at councils. I'm just think of it as an as a way of trying to save some money, but at the same time getting a new car. Thank you.
Associated with car parking.
Would you like to say that, Mr.
I'm sure it can be explored. I imagine that the answer would probably be no, based purely on promotion of a non-council. So I don't know what the regulation it would, but I'm more than happy. I'm sure that we'll be happy to explore it. But I probably would imagine no is the answer.
Yeah, I think Mr. Roberts was commenting that it may not be the most popular advertisement as somebody's getting a ticket, a parking fine. It might be a bit of a niche opportunity. So, any other questions on that one? No? Okay. So I suggest we, and it sounds like the team is keen to do that anyway, we leave the specific decision as recommended in the recommendation to Mr. Watson and Mr. Stevens. But the general principle being that we will start the journey to electric, so I've got a pun in there as well, to electric. And we've also talked, I think, offline about the fact that there will probably be further vehicles coming in due course, so we may get better utilisation out of those charging points in due course and some standardisation. So it's good to see the start, but definitely not the end. So are we all agreed on the recommendation as documented?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Okay, executive working groups for this year coming. It's with me. Listen, it's probably not the most exciting one from a resident's perspective. Any questions on this, please, Councillor Garrett?
It's just a conversation I know I've had with Democratic Service, and I just wanted clarity on it now while we're all in the chamber. I believe at governance it was discussed that we don't need to put a formal substitute down, so anybody within the group that's not can make it. So that's why we've not put any substitutes on there. That means it's free for anybody. I just wanted to make sure that's the point. And is it also the case that someone that's not on that group, working group, that wants to join, as long as they get clearance from the chair, I'm guessing, or Democratic Services, they are able to attend that meeting as well? Is that quite correct?
Yeah, so I think that requires a little bit of discussion. So I think what we said in the constitutional review was we would have nominated subs to try and keep continuity, even in working groups. Ideally, yes. However, we accepted the fact that life happens to people, and therefore, ultimately, in those situations, the group can nominate any substitute. Is that broadly correct? Yeah. So
do you need them for this report?
So I think we would, and this is an issue I think I had because the Lib Dem subs haven't been rolled over either. So it is. I think that's a delegated thing that we can update offline. Is that correct, Ms. Willis?
It is. Yes, just to confirm that that's the case. So if you want to send them through after the meeting, there is an existing delegation to the Chief Executive who can deal with that.
I think the one complication that links to your point, if you don't mind, Councillor Garrett, that I'll just leverage off, is that because we've split the property and regeneration working group, I think for valid reasons, It does, and Mr. Breeden and myself were discussing this briefly earlier in the week. It does then cause a little bit of a challenge in terms of the sensitivity of some of the information. So historically, for everybody's benefit, I think the Property Working Group the documentation has just been visible to those members. Is that correct? Yeah. So I think the plan going forward would be definitely the Regeneration Working Group, which is looking at the town centre primarily. That will be ring fenced in terms of the access to that, and it would be my recommendation to my colleagues, and we haven't discussed this because it sort of popped in the last couple of days. My recommendation to my colleagues would be that your group, Councillor Finnan-Cook, stays the same based on the commercial information there around vacancy rates, help me here, rents, all sorts of stuff that you get exposed to. So the same rule would apply, I think, which I think does make the substitution a little bit more difficult. And I think it's also maybe just worth all the members bearing in mind that if they are on those two groups, they're definitely within the circle of trust and potentially, as you are with all information, but that particularly that one, you could undermine the council's position in any inappropriate sharing. Does anybody want to? Are we happy with that as a broad principle? Because it is literally just popped up in the last day or two. You wanted to ask a question, Councillor Rise, as well? No? You're good? Yeah, okay. I guess the other question in my head, which only popped in as I was reviewing it at the close of doors today, was whether the Property and Economic Development Group should be quite so big, and whether it might be wise to trim it down to 7, which would allow one representative probably from each of the opposition parties and a reduction of the Liberal Democrat group. I welcome any comments from anybody of that, particularly the opposition leader, perhaps, whether that's sensible.
Yeah, just throw me under the bus. I mean, from my side, having been on it previously and now, I think it's a very worthwhile committee. I think the time of the meeting, I think, has sometimes proven to be a problem, and I think it might also be a problem if you put in other members as well. I mean, I'm sure the other groups would be happy to, and I don't know, happy to have members on that as well. But you're right, it will be very difficult to have subs on that as well. So if someone can't make it, then that's the situation, I think. So I don't have a problem either way, to be honest with you. I think it's probably one for us to discuss offline with the other group leaders.
That's an excellent point. Thanks, you, Councillor Garrett. I think we have a group leaders meeting coming up, so we'll leave it as it is for now with the numbers and everything else, but with the constraint that those two groups are effectively closed groups. I think we're all agreed that that's a good point of principle because of the sensitivity. In terms of the size of those groups, maybe that's something we'll reflect on and we'll take back to the group leaders. But I think it probably makes sense to make it a little bit smaller, the Property and Economic Development Group. Any questions from anybody else? Oh, please, Councillor Ashby.
Sorry, I just wanted to pick up on a point that you talked about, those two working groups in particular being a circle of trust. The other working groups, as they are executive working groups that people are able to attend as non-members, those are still governed by that confidentiality. The information discussed in those until it comes back to exec is not in the public domain. So I just wanted to, you did make a point about those two, I just wanted to make the point of whilst other members are able to attend, the confidentiality and the circle of trust applies to those working groups as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ashby. Point well made. I think I was probably focused on the economic damage it could do to council. Please, Councillor Garrett.
Just off the back of that, and I don't believe me, and I'm sure Rachel knows exactly where I'm going to go. One of the historic issues we have, and I know it's down to workload, so this is not a dig at all, is the time in which the working group minutes come out. So if there's anything we can do about that, because sometimes they don't come until maybe the next council meeting or sometimes afterwards. If there is that circle of trust, but there's no minutes, I think we need to bridge that gap somehow.
Okay, we'll take that one away. So I think the recommendation as stands holds for now. And we will take away the comment you just made, the issue of potentially the numbers, but we are adding the recommendation that both of those two groups are closed groups in terms of the information being made available to all members, just to reduce the numbers of the potential risk. Okay, are we all agreed on that, colleagues?
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah, thank you, with the addition. Who knew we'd get so much mileage out of that one? Right. Surrey Leaders Group outside bodies. No, hang on. Appointments to outside bodies. In my excitement, I've jumped ahead one. Appointments to outside bodies. Thank you very much to everybody, first of all, that have participated, members obviously that participated in those groups. Now, there are some members of the general public that take roles for us, which is fantastic. Are there any questions or queries on this one?
No.
No. Okay. I have one small one that I think that on point 1.9, I think my Egyptian hieroglyphics have been misinterpreted. The Briars Centre didn't eliminate the trustee role. They eliminated the management committee role. So therefore, the role of myself and Councillor Rebecca Jennings-Evans is not there anymore, and others as well, others that were part of the management committee. So if that could be just corrected or noted in the minutes, that would be appreciated before any trouble arises. I might have one more, apologies, bear with me. Can I just confirm the officer's reading of Miss Gomes' trust, where it says that external nomination received appointment pending a meeting with trustees? Are we saying we are delegating to those trustees to make that appointment from today, or does their recommendation come back to the leader CEO? What's the thinking there, please?
Thank you, Chair. So I understand that they haven't actually had any constructive dialogue yet with this external appointment. So the suggestion is that once they're in a better position to say whether or not that vacancy could be filled by this external nomination, perhaps there is an existing delegation to the Chief Executive in consultation with group leaders. So perhaps if you're happy, you could go down that route, or alternatively, it could come back to the next meeting.
Deliriously happy with that route. So thank you for that. We'll see what comes of that. And again, thank you to the people stepping forward for that. I think otherwise we're in reasonable. Oh, thank you, Councillor Rowlands, please.
I just wonder whether we are happy with the Surrey Heath Arts Council, because in my experience it isn't what it purports to be, because it meets on an occasional basis and just apportions bursaries to promising people in the borough. From my point of view, it reflects a rather downcast view, recognising that Councillor Skipper has been replaced and he provided some fulcrum for advancing arts and culture within the council. But if we're hoping that this nominated Surrey Heath Arts Council was performing the role of promoting arts and culture in the borough, in my experience after a year of being on that body, it certainly is not doing that. And I don't know what we think it's there to do, and whether its reference really does indicate what it's doing. But because if it's to develop arts and culture, it certainly isn't doing that.
Thank you, Councillor Rowland. So I think what you might be alluding to is whether the terms of reference is correct for that organisation or not. I seem to remember when last time I looked at it on the website, it is actually doing what the terms of reference say. Now, if we wish to broaden the terms of reference, then that's certainly something that could be looked at, and it does link quite nicely, as you alluded to the work Councillor Skipper was doing on arts and cultural strategy for the borough. So Councillor Rise has now picked up that baton in terms of his portfolio, and what I would suggest is that maybe we take an action, or he takes an action, to contact Councillor Skipper to understand the status of his work, that consideration is given to potentially a sub-task and finish working group to bring that forward, which I'm pretty sure I know where one volunteer is coming from. As part of that, perhaps a review is done of the terms of reference of that organisation if we have the ability to influence it, which I don't know, because I don't know its constitutional status or its own decision-making powers, etc. Councillor Rise, do you want to?
Thank you, Leader. I do just want to note that and kind of pay tribute to Councillor Skipper's work that he undertook in the previous year. It's something I'm going to be taking forward. I was meeting with officers today to discuss the culture and art strategy that Councillor Skipper began moving forward. That's also going to be something I intend to bring to the Net Zero Environment and Leisure Working Group, as set out in this paper, as something for that group to also consider at an early stage for cross-party and cross-chamber input. With regards to the Surrey Heath Arts Council, I don't believe that they are the right organisation to drive forward arts and culture in the borough. I think the terms of reference that they have serve them relatively well, but I'm happy to take that away to review to see if there is ways that we can engage with the Arts Council to kind of tap into their knowledge. But I am going. My intention is to bring back a fully fleshed out arts and culture strategy for consideration by the executive, and it will have gone through my working group, which I'm glad Councillor Rowlands is going to be a member of. So I'll be benefiting from his knowledge as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything else on that one? No, really just to ask, before we go on to the recommendation, just ask to everybody that as things arise within those organisations you're supporting, it would be very helpful, I think, to all councillors just get a drip feed of relevant information that's totally apolitical, our roles in those organisations. So please just keep each other abreast of developments, particularly any concerns or equally major successes. Okay, so are we happy to support the recommendation as it stands? Agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Now we get on to the Surrey Leaders Group outside bodies. I think there's been a small update to this since it was initially put forward, which is I think Councillor Liz Noble has put herself forward for Surrey Heartlands Integrated Partnership Board. My understanding, Councillor Wheeler has also put herself forward for the Surrey Heartlands Integrated Partnership Board. So we'll have to resolve that one. And Councillor Rowlands has put himself forward for the vacancy on the Adults and Health Select Committee, which I understand Councillor Wheeler has also put a name forward for. Would that be correct? Okay, so let me see if I can summarise. We have one nomination for the pension board. I apologise if I got the wrong terminology, which is Councillor Kang. So maybe I suspect we'll be in agreement that one goes forward. Obviously, we're not deciding today. It's decided by an independent group of the Surrey leaders. But we're just saying that our nomination can go forward. So that one, I think, is a slam dunk. I put myself forward for, I've even forgotten now. The Mental Health Trust. Sorry?
Surrey and Borders.
Surrey and Borders, yeah. Thank you. I mean, Councillor Garrett, do you wish to put your nomination forward as well? You're happy to defer, thank you.
No, sorry, you can have it.
Yeah, thank you. But I do appreciate that Councillor Garrett was offering himself forward to represent the borough as well. So that one's a slam dunk. So we have two colleagues to resolve. Does anybody want to comment on that or put forward their case for the executive? Councillor Wheeler.
Sorry, and please bear with me. I'm going to remain off camera because I am unwell and therefore sitting in my bed, and nobody needs to see that of an evening. So yes, I understood that an email that had sort of come out earlier this week, and I'm sorry if I've missed an update today. My particular interest in this area is based on both long-term resident but also my professional work. There is no conflict of interest in that I don't do any work at all with any of the trusts in the local area anymore, but have a great deal of knowledge about the way in which trusts and other organisations work together or don't necessarily work together in order to improve the welfare of our citizens, particularly in relation to population health and some of the work that we can do around that.
Sorry, Councillor Noble, please, talking to myself again. Thank you, Councillor Wheeler.
Thank you, Chair. I've put myself forward for this role on the basis that the borough is divided between two healthcare trusts, and I have always been passionate that the Heartlands should be accountable to Surrey Heath Borough Council, and therefore I would like to put myself forward for this role in order to make them accountable and to represent the residents of the villages at Heartlands.
Thank you. Councillor Rowlands, do you want to put forward your case?
Yes, thank you, Chair. This goes, I suppose, as the father of this group, the oldest member, it goes back to the when I was serving on the Middlesex Community Health Council, when the Community Health Council existed for some years. I also served on the Community Health Council when it existed in this area as well. But the government in its infinite wisdom got rid of the Community Health Councils, and we have a sort of patchwork that replaced them. But a lot of people regard it as a shame they disappeared, because I don't think the general public are quite aware of what they disappeared into. So I've had some sort of background in this sort of work, dealing with the democratic element of the health service, this form of the health service as it operated.
Thank you, Councillor Rowlands. I mean, so maybe we'll have to let's take them one by one. I think we'll have to have a vote on this, won't we? By the executive, yeah. So we've got two nominations for the Adult Health Select Committee, which is Councillor Rowlands and Councillor Wheeler. Can I have all those in favour of Councillor Wheeler, please? Okay, so that is a decision. Thank you for your putting yourself forward, Councillor Rowlands. We'll try to keep you busy on the art side instead. Okay. If we then move on to the second nomination, I don't know whether Councillor Wheeler, you want to be put forward for both.
No, I'm very happy with where I am. Thank you, Councillor MacDonald.
Okay. Super. Okay, so I'll take that as a withdrawal of your nomination, and therefore Councillor Noble.
I'm quite sure that Councillor Noble and we share a very similar issue, sitting slap bang in the middle of two ICSs. So I'm sure we gaze well on it.
Excellent. So Councillor Noble will take the Surrey Heartlands Integrated Partnership Board. So it's incumbent on all those nominated to fill up your forms and get them in by the date due to Reigate and Banstead, who are now the Secretariat, I think, for the Surrey leaders. And copy you as well.
Send them to me.
We have to send them to you and you send them to them. Okay, apparently we have to send them to Rachel and then send them to, sorry, Miss Willis. Thank you for the update on that. So are we all happy with those decisions? Are we agreed on those?
Agreed.
Thank you. Okay, item 12, procurement of the M&E contract in the square. Just to clarify, this isn't excluding the press and public, is that correct?
Annex 2 is.
Annex 2 of item 12 is. Okay, thank you.
That is correct.
Thank you for that. And I think it's over to yourself. Thank you.
Hi, please forgive me if I'm brief. You'll hear that my voice has not improved since the last council meeting. This paper is regarding the periodic retendering exercise of the mechanical and electrical services for the shopping centre. The service contract with the current provider expired on the 31st of March, and renewal is required to ensure the centre's building systems are maintained to ensure health and safety compliance, and the 5-year planned maintenance programme for the scheme can be progressed to maintain and maximise the services. The service contract will cover the day-to-day maintenance and testing of over 250 component assets. There's a list of those assets being included in the report. Procurement exercise has been conducted for award of the 3-year contract. The results of these can be found on page 87 of the report, followed by the scoring and outcome of the tender exercise on page 91. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions on the main report? Watching that we don't stray. No? Okay, it might be just me, I apologise. So it might be a technical question, this one, so it might go that way. This JCT measured term contract, that's not a 3-year contract with a 1-year break. It's described here as a 1+1+1. Can somebody help me what that is?
So, yeah, it's a 3-year contract, but it has reviews at 12-month intervals throughout the contract.
Thank you. And it's, okay, that's fair enough. Who is the, am I allowed to ask who the current incumbent is? No, I'm not allowed to ask who the current, so we'll have to...
Sorry, who the current
incumbent?
The incumbent? It's Integral.
Integral, okay, thank you. Well, somebody whoever's got the current contract. There's nothing current contract, not the new contract. Yeah. I think that was all of my questions. Please, Councillor Garrett.
I've got a question reference page 113, which won't relate to any names or numbers. Is it something we want to discuss now? I wasn't asked about scoring, that's all.
If it's at that level, I'm sure we can. You know the rules, Councillor Garrett.
Yeah, I always try and make sure I don't, because I know we don't want to go into a closed session unless we really have to. So I just want to understand, because we've got 2 businesses there, both of them with pretty equal quality score, and both of them with pretty different financial scores. And obviously we're going for the one that's got the higher overall score. I just want to understand what the difference makeup is in the finance score, if we can do that without discussing anything we can't discuss in a closed room.
So really the question is, how do you get a score under the finance score? Yeah. Is that, I think the process of that should be okay. Yeah.
It was page 113, the first box, point 22.
60% of the scoring is on price. So the cheapest bidder, if you like, gets the maximum, and then the other bidders score a proportion against that maximum.
So it's purely done on the fact that the higher score means lower value or higher value?
Lower cost.
Okay. So lower cost doesn't necessarily mean best quality.
That's why 40% of the scoring is on the quality rating of the bid.
Okay.
I think it's fair to say there's a number of hurdles even just to enter the race, which link to quality as well. Yeah, is that fair in terms of the screening?
That's right. People get pre-qualified. Yeah.
No, the score's fine. Okay, so we're still good. We're still within the pitch boundaries, I think. Councillor Garrett.
This is an industry which I work in, okay? And cheap or cost effective doesn't necessarily mean best quality and life. So that's bearing in mind I sell motors as a daily job and I sell into industry, so I know this market quite well. So not all of this market, I get you. So I'm just a little bit concerned that we might be buying something that might be look really, really good now, but we might be coming back to this chamber again in a couple of years' time and realise that what we've just purchased is not necessarily the best. And I'm not saying we go for the highest one either. I'm not saying I'm an expert. I'm just using what I do in my day-to-day job.
And just to clarify, Councillor Garrett, which page were you referring to again?
I'm just looking at the fact that we're looking at the finance makes a certain percentage up, and we're looking at the fact that it's a lower value.
Yeah. But you mentioned 112, and we're still on. That's 13, and we're on 12.
So I'm on. Sorry, did I say 112? I meant 113.22. So
actually, that's the next item.
Right. Okay. That's why I asked because I couldn't make. Okay. That's that's totally
we're
my
still in
fault.
process and everything else, so that's all been very helpful. I think your point is well understood and valid. So we're all educated overall. Right, so any more on the maintenance contract? Okay. I think I'm also good. So are we happy, colleagues, to agree the recommendation?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you. Right. So I think item 14, I think it might be wise to go into a closed session because I think there are going to be more issues in this one. That would be my counsel to my colleagues. Are you all okay with that? Yeah? Okay. So I do have to read these words out. That's what you've told me previously.
Yes.
Okay, I'll go super speed. The Executive is advised to resolve that under Regulation 4 of the Local Authority Executive Arrangements, Meetings and Access to Information England Regulations 2012, the public can be excluded from the meeting for the following items of business on the grounds that they may involve the likely disclosure of exempt information as defined in the paragraphs of Part 1 of Schedule 12A of the Act as set out below. 12 Part Paragraphs 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information. Item 14, paragraph 3, information relating to the financial or business affairs of any particular person, including the authority holding that information.
Agreed.
Agreed. So,